3 months after my grandmother passed away, I received an email from my cousin, Vanessa, announcing that the family had finally found a buyer for the old lighthouse property on Windmere Island, a place everyone had spent years calling a useless burden, even though I had quietly spent my savings restoring it and turning it into a successful coastal research retreat. I almost laughed when Vanessa wrote, "We'll divide the sale money fairly this time," because there was only one problem with her plan. The property had never belonged to the family at all, and 2 weeks earlier, I had received the final court document confirming that the lighthouse and the surrounding 40 acres were legally mine. For years, my relatives had treated my work as an embarrassing hobby, especially after I left a prestigious corporate position to study endangered marine habitats along the northern coast. And whenever family gatherings became uncomfortable, someone would inevitably ask when I planned to get a real career and stop wasting money on boats, equipment, and field research. What they never knew was that my environmental consulting company had grown into a highly profitable operation. My research had attracted international clients, and the lighthouse property, which they believed was slowly falling apart, had become the headquarters for a 5-person research team whose contracts were worth more than anything my relatives had ever imagined. The real shock came one rainy Tuesday evening when I discovered why Vanessa believed she could sell it. Because she had filed paperwork claiming that our grandmother had left the property to the entire family, and that I was merely its caretaker, while my relatives were supposedly entitled to make decisions about its future. I stared at the scanned documents on my laptop until I noticed the signature at the bottom, and then I opened the folder containing the original estate records, where the handwritten will clearly stated that the property was to pass exclusively to me, because I had been the only grandchild who had maintained it and paid the taxes after everyone else abandoned it. Instead of confronting Vanessa immediately, I drove to the county records office the following morning, carrying every deed, tax receipt, renovation invoice, insurance document, and legal letter I had collected during the previous 7 years, and the clerk confirmed something that made my stomach tighten. Someone had already submitted a request to transfer the property into a newly created family trust. Who filed it? I asked, and when she gave me Vanessa's name, I realized this wasn't a misunderstanding or an overconfident family discussion anymore. It was an organized attempt to take control of something that legally belonged to me. I contacted my attorney, Daniel Mercer, and within 48 hours, he uncovered an even bigger problem, because Vanessa had convinced my Uncle Raymond to sign an affidavit claiming that I had promised to surrender the lighthouse after my grandmother died, while my Aunt Celeste had provided a statement saying that I had agreed during a family dinner to sell the property and distribute the proceeds. Daniel listened quietly as I explained that neither conversation had ever happened, then said, "Don't call them, don't threaten them, and don't warn them. If they believe their paperwork will work, let them show us exactly how far they were willing to go." That advice changed everything, because instead of sending an angry message to the family group chat, I began documenting every conversation, every document, and every suspicious transaction connected to the property, while Daniel requested certified copies of the filings and discovered that Vanessa had also approached a developer who wanted to build luxury cottages along the shoreline. The developer had apparently offered $4.6 million for the land, and Vanessa had told him that the family was already preparing to sell, which explained why she had been so eager to gain control before anyone could challenge her story. Then, on a Friday afternoon, my phone rang while I was aboard a research vessel 30 miles offshore, and the caller was the developer's attorney asking whether I had authorized negotiations concerning Windmere Lighthouse. I answered carefully, "No, and I'm the sole registered owner," and there was a long silence before he replied, "Then I think you need to see what your cousin has been showing our company," because she had presented them with documents suggesting that my ownership was temporary and that the family could transfer the property after a private settlement. The next morning, Daniel and I met with the county property commissioner, who froze the attempted transfer and referred the forged documents to investigators. And when the authorities compared the signatures and dates against the original estate records, several inconsistencies became impossible to explain. Vanessa had altered a copy of the old family agreement. Raymond had signed a statement based on information he admitted he had never personally witnessed. And Celeste had repeated claims she now said Vanessa had told her were true, leaving the entire scheme balanced on a chain of assumptions that collapsed the moment someone checked the official records. When the family discovered that the property sale had been stopped, my phone exploded with messages, with Vanessa accusing me of humiliating everyone, Raymond insisting that the family deserved a share because we all helped Grandma, and Celeste telling me that I should have handled the matter privately instead of involving authorities. I finally answered with one sentence. You tried to sell something you did not own, and you expected me to stay silent because we share a last name. Then I blocked the group and returned to my research station, where the waves outside sounded strangely peaceful compared with the chaos I had left behind. The investigation continued for several months, and although the prosecutor ultimately determined that Raymond had been misled rather than knowingly participating in the scheme, Vanessa faced charges related to falsified property documents and attempted fraudulent transfer, while the developer withdrew completely after learning what had happened. She later accepted a legal agreement that required restitution, probation, and a permanent restriction from handling real estate transactions, and the family eventually learned that the money they had expected from the supposed $4.6 million sale had never existed because the property was never theirs to sell. A year later, Windermere Lighthouse looked nothing like the neglected building my relatives had once mocked, because I had transformed the old keeper's quarters into a small marine education center where students could study coastal ecosystems, visiting researchers could stay during field projects, and local families could learn about the wildlife living beyond the cliffs. One evening, while watching the sun disappear behind the water, I opened the old folder containing every insult, dismissal, false claim, and painful memory my family had given me. But instead of feeling angry, I deleted it because I finally understood that I didn't need a ledger of everything they had taken from me when I could spend the rest of my life building something they could never take away. 2 years later, I received an invitation to the opening of a new coastal conservation program funded by one of my former clients, and the keynote announcement revealed that Windermere Lighthouse would become the permanent research center for the project, with funding sufficient to support dozens of young scientists for the next decade. I thought about Vanessa's message, claiming the family deserved a piece of my future, smiled at the absurdity of it, and realized that the greatest victory wasn't keeping the property. It was reaching a point where their approval no longer had any value in my life, because I had stopped measuring my worth by people who had spent years trying to convince me that I was failing. Please subscribe to our channel and share this video with your friends and family. We create entertaining and inspiring stories for our viewers, and your support helps us continue making great content for you.